Welcome to the So Much More podcast, where we talk with people in the custom window treatment, soft home furnishings industry, and so much more. I'm your host, Ciel DeGuglielmo. My guest on the podcast today is Celeste Breen. Celeste is the owner of So Much Fun and Creations by Celeste. So she's running two different businesses. She started teaching sewing 20 years ago after working as a nurse for the previous 20 years. So far, Celeste has taught over 200 different students, and that impact is just tremendous. Celeste also runs Creations by Celeste, where she makes custom home decor. So I really enjoy talking with Celeste and learning how she balances her two businesses and again, her enthusiasm when I get to laugh with my guests, I really enjoy it. So I hope you enjoy hearing from Celeste today. Hi, Celeste. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. I love to, I get ideas about who I want to interview sometimes when I see things on Facebook or Instagram, or sometimes I'll notice somebody's website and I'll go to it and I'll think, what, geez, why have I not asked them before this? And I love you have pictures of some of the students that you teach on your website. Yes. So we have a lot to talk about today. I would love if you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your life.
Okay. Well, I've married and been married for almost 44 years. We have 3 adult kids. They're all married. And between the 3 of them, we have 4 grandchildren.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. And they're 7, 5, 4, and 2.
Oh, they are at an active age.
Oh, yes.
So tell me about how you did start your business.
Well, I used to work as a nurse, and after about 20 years of working the overnight shift, I decided that I was tired of it, literally and figuratively. It was draining. And I decided to just at least take a break. I went to a local sewing store that I used to go to all the time, and I was talking with them and they're like, oh, we could use somebody here to work here. Okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I started working there, did a little teaching there, went to a different store and started teaching there. And then that store closed and I decided, well, rather than going and trying to find another job, I would start teaching people on my own, since I had already been doing it and found out that I really kind of liked it.
Okay.
So...
And you're not the first nurse that I've interviewed who has come into the sewing industry, but doing the night shift, oh my goodness. And did you have young children while you were doing this?
Yes. Yes,
how?
I had.
Please tell me how.
I slept in fits and spurts.
Oh.
I mean, literally, I would go home, stay up, sleep a little bit. Everybody would take a nap, get up, have dinner, go back to bed, go to work, and just kept repeating that.
Okay.
So,
as someone who needs a stretch of sleep altogether, I bow to you. That would somebody would have ended up strangled, and it might have been myself. So, did you have any teaching background at all?
None.
Okay. All right. So. How did you learn to sew? Because if you were going to a fabric store, you were already sewing.
Yeah. My grandmother used to sew. And when I was about 8 years old, she started to let me use her machine. And so she taught me a little bit. I took classes at a summer school one year, took it in high school, and then just kept on going from there.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, the experience of teaching children how to sew, because this is not a skill that is being taught in schools the way it used to. It is in some schools, but not that many anymore.
Right. So, well, I taught my 3 kids using a program called Kids Can Sew. I taught each of them.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah. And then that was it. And none of them sew anymore. None of them sew.
But you taught them a skill, and that's important.
Yes. But then when I decided to try to branch out on my own, that's when I reached back to them and bought the program and used that for many years until I just changed to a different program now. Okay. But I don't know. I found that I could get down to the real basics, that I can sew lots of stuff, but I'm still more of a simple sewer. I much rather do easy things.
Okay.
And so I think that I could get down to that level with them.
Okay. And that's interesting because I look at some of the things that people make, whether it's in window treatments or garment sewing or bags or any other of the millions of things that you can sew. And I think I discovered not too long ago, I am not a process, like I'm not a enjoy the journey person when it comes to sewing. I want to be done. And I do love sewing and I look forward to doing it, but I want the project done. Yeah. And so sometimes the simple things are really the most rewarding. Yeah. And I don't necessarily want something that has 57 steps to it before I'm seeing a finished product. So how much of your business is teaching sewing and how much window treatment and home furnishings are you doing?
I would say probably at least 80% is teaching.
Okay. So that's really where your focus is most of the time. Yeah. Okay. And so I've really tried to keep through these last couple months to talk about some things other than the pandemic. However, if 80% of your business is teaching and that becomes a little difficult when we're in quarantine, what did you do?
Well, first I panicked.
Okay, good. Just like the rest of us.
Yeah. And then I had a neighbor reach out to me to ask if I could make a mask. And I'm like, well, I guess so. I've got fabric sitting here. And so my once daughter-in-law sent me some instructions that she had gotten, and I made a couple masks, and then I just put it out there and said, does anybody need masks? And I sewed somewhere between 300 and 400 masks.
Wow. Okay. Good for you.
And, some of them I gave away because I had told everybody that for every 2 I sold, I would give 1 away.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I did. And that's how it got me through until the state opened up enough that I could start teaching again.
Okay. And I noticed on your website that you had pictures of the kids, and there were some pictures. Some of them have masks. When they're action shots, they had masks on.
Yes. Yes.
How anxious were they to get back to learning to sew?
There were some that couldn't wait to come back, and there were others that were just way too scared.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So,
and I get it. I totally get that. So, yeah, that's tough to hear because the kids have had enough of a tough time with missing school and their friends and everything else. So what challenges did you find in adjusting your class when everybody's wearing a mask and they need to stay apart? What is your setup like for your kids to learn?
Well, initially I have a room down in my basement, which is my basement. My whole basement's finished. And I had 4 machines in there. Well, what I have done now is I moved 2 of those machines out into the other part of the basement. I have like a set of double doors. So I've opened up the double doors.
Okay.
And so everybody has their own table. I do all the ironing now instead of letting them do that.
Okay.
And basically they all are kind of have to stay at their table. They can't share anything like they used to be able to say, oh, I forgot my scissors, and you can't do that.
Right.
And I get in a lot of steps now, walking back and forth.
You do. I didn't think about that. Well, we were all stuck in our houses for a long time. We've got some steps to make up for, right? So what kind of projects do you work on with the kids? What are, like, say if it's a beginning class, what's the first thing you make with them?
So the first thing that they make is a 9-patch pillow.
Okay.
So first they go through all the little steps of sewing on paper, and then they sew samples, and we staple them into their book and all that kind of stuff. And then they put together a 9-patch pillow.
Nice.
So it's fun because I have all these, a lot of it is scraps from making masks. So I just say, okay, here you go. Pick out 9 squares, arrange them into a pretty pattern.
Okay. So that was going to be my next question. Like, how much ahead of time do you do? But you're encouraging their creativity and what do they like? What did they want to work with?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So, and then it's just a progression. This program is really nice. It has 12 projects, and they just kind of keep building on on the next one and stuff like that.
So what do they work on, if you don't mind sharing with people?
Well, the program that I'm using is called Avery Lane. And so they do the pillow, and then they do a drawstring bag, then they do a book bag, a pin cushion, a hot chocolate cozy, pillowcase.
Oh, nice. So they're all really useful things.
Yes.
But things that you can really appreciate having.
Right.
Oh, nice. I really like that.
Yeah.
So your business is a little bit different because it focuses on the teaching, but like running any business, there's running the business and then there's actually doing the business. What are some of the challenges of running a teaching business?
One of them is getting the students, making sure too that, like for the after school classes, I have to make sure that I keep up on who owes what, make sure that, send out invoices, and, I guess other things would be just like, now that that I'm supplying all the fabric, I have to make sure that I have pieces cut for them and have enough different kits so that when they're doing a project, they have more than one to choose from, that there's just not one there left.
And it's been interesting, as I'm in Pennsylvania, we're in different states, but as the state has opened up, noticing what some businesses have to do to be able to accommodate their customers, and recognizing that there are additional costs on most of these businesses. A friend of mine owns a hair salon, and she had to buy the thermometer, the forehead touch thermometer, and extra wipes, and put up plexiglass between the stations, and all these other things that required time and thought and money. And like you said, if they have to stay at their station, then you can't share scissors, and you can't. So everyone's got to have all their own stuff. So you had some preparation to do before you were able to open back up again. Okay. All right. In the running of a teaching business, I know I've talked about this many times on the podcast, and in trying to get new students, do you ever run into, you're just teaching them how to sew. It shouldn't cost that much to do. And I'm just wondering if you run into any of the obstacles that we do as workroom owners.
I haven't too much. I can't say that I have. I think maybe because this is more of an upper middle class area.
Okay.
That they're used to paying for dance lessons and gymnastics lessons.
That makes perfect sense. This is an extracurricular activity. It is not it's a luxury, just like custom window treatments are. They don't have to spend this, but it's something they want to do for their children. And so, that makes perfect sense to me. I can appreciate that. So in terms of connecting with these kids, I had a conversation earlier today about maybe not always feeling like I had the patience I needed as a mom when my kids were younger. First part of the question is, do you have more patience with these kids than you did with your own in teaching them to sew? And how do you balance when they have different skill levels and different learning styles? So the first part of the question, what would your kids answer? How would they answer that question?
Oh, much more patience now than I did with them.
Okay. All right.
That is for sure.
Celeste is honest. Okay. And then how about adapting to different learning styles and abilities to learn? How do you do that?
Well, I've found, well, first of all, I do have kids at all different levels in my classes.
Okay.
So I will have kids who are working on regular commercial patterns and kids who are beginners.
Okay.
So, I'm always having to, as I go to each student, figure out, okay, what do you need and things like that.
Okay.
And then I have found that I would find that there were kids that needed me to tell them each time that they had to do a step, I had to explain it to them.
Okay.
And at first that was very frustrating. And then I just realized that, okay, I just need to do that. This child, I cannot, I can't tell them two things. I have to tell them, pin these edges together. And then I go back and I go, now you're going to sew it here with this seam allowance.
Okay.
And others, I could say, okay, you're going to do this, this, and this. And I can walk away.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And I've never been a teacher of young children, but I've seen that in classrooms where teachers have to make that, they have to be that resilient to say, okay, this child needs this child needs this, and the other 24 need that. So but you're also dealing with motor skills and fine motor skills.
Yes.
And kids have different abilities. So do you have different age kids in the class as well?
Anywhere from 8 to 15.
Okay. And have you had a couple of adults in your class too? I
do have I have a couple adults. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And it's always been fascinating to me, the development of fine motor skills. I can remember when my oldest daughter was about a year old and I was watching her pick things up and thinking how marvelous and how skilled she was. And one of my sisters-in-law who had a child who was a year older saying, oh, look how spazzy she is when she tries to pick things up. That's so cute. That's how he was a year ago. And I'm like, spazzy? She's not spazzy. She's perfectly coordinated. But it was insight into, she's going to develop even further than this. This isn't as far as she's going. She's going to develop more skills. And as it's funny now, it wasn't then. My feelings were hurt. But it also was eye-opening to me. Oh, right. They have different abilities. And there's a reason I never taught young children. I don't have the patience for it. I know myself well enough. But I would love to talk to you about what it's like for them to grasp these skills and to know that they've made something themselves. This would be the one thing that would entice me to teach children to sew, would be their reaction. So tell me what that's like for your students.
Well, it's when they get that first pillow made, even after just sewing a couple of pieces of fabric together, they're thrilled. Mm-hmm. But when they have that first pillow done and I take their picture with it, I mean, now I can't see their grin as much, but I mean, they would be grinning from ear to ear. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just like, can I take this home to show mom? Can I take this home? Aww. And it would be just, it's just so rewarding to just see that,
I think one of the things that I've really enjoyed recently in the podcast is talking with people who are a little bit newer in the industry and their enthusiasm and their excitement. And I find that when I talk to people like that, I'm just as enthusiastic and excited about my own business. And I'm wondering if because let's face it, sewing two squares together is not that exciting for you anymore. You've been doing it a really long time. Does watching their excitement affect you at all?
It does, yeah. Okay. It makes me happy and want to go, okay, this is a lot of fun. And just because I have something up there to sew that I don't really want to sew. There are happy things to sew too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So let's talk for a few minutes about the window treatment part of your business. First of all, what's it like for you to shift in between the two businesses? Are there any challenges there for you with that?
Yeah, because I think I have to be a little bit more professional when I'm working on window treatments than when I'm down there with the kids, and I can goof around and stuff. And so, yeah, there is a little bit of difference there. Yeah.
And in that part of your business, are you retail to the trade or both?
Mostly retail.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And have you always been retail?
I've worked with one or two designers, but I haven't heard from them, so I don't even know if they're still in business.
Okay. What would you say, and it could be from either side of your business, or if it happens to be both, first of all, what's your definition of success? And what is your greatest success in your business?
I'm trying to think. I think success is being able to actually now have a home life and work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just, I feel like it's much more balanced than it has ever been before.
Okay. And it's interesting. I ask that question all the time. I hardly ever get the same answer twice. And yet I agree with so many of them because I think they sound great. I really do think that that's important. And I don't always achieve it. So maybe that's why I think it's so important. What would you say has been your greatest success in either business or both?
I think one of my biggest successes was a couple of students that I have that have gone on and actually won statewide competitions and things like that.
Wow. That's exciting.
Yeah.
And that they took the skills that you taught them and kept using them.
Yeah. Kept using them. Yeah.
Love that. I love that. I want to jump in and take a moment to thank the sponsors who make it possible for me to bring you the podcast each week. My sponsors are people in the industry that I have personally had a connection to, purchased from, or used their services. So it makes it really easy for me to tell you about them and the great things that they have to offer. Because I feel so strongly about education in our industry, I'm thrilled that as the owner of the Curtains and Soft Furnishings Resource Library, I can use the resources of the library to help support the podcast. The library hosts the industry's largest curated collection of educational resources for the custom home furnishings professional. Membership to the library gives you access to a wealth of downloadable reference materials, videos, live events, as well as a community of support to help you develop your design, sales, and fabrication skills, and to grow or start a business. Join the library today at csfrl.org. Angels Linings would like to invite you to become part of their family. With reputable lining comes exceptional customer service. Trust them with your linings like I do. You get 2 Tootsie Pops with every bolt of lining you receive. For smiles, satisfaction, and a sugar kick all around, call Angels Linings at 1-800-450-9368. The Workroom Channel is the premier online training provider for professional fabrication skills. Go to theworkroomchannel.com to browse the selection of anytime access courses created by industry experts. Watch detailed demonstration videos, download companion materials, and participate in private course discussion boards with your instructor and classmates from around the world. Start your course path today at theworkroomchannel.com. If you've listened to the podcast, you know how much I've learned from Michele Williams. And I think most of my guests have mentioned taking at least one of her classes or gotten coaching from her. Her business is Scarlet Thread Consulting. Michele loves to work with creative business owners to help them understand all aspects of their business and to use their gifts and talents to make it profitable. Michele is a strategic profitability coach certified in the Profit First methodology, and she can be reached at scarletthreadconsulting.com. I've also mentioned my membership with the WCAA, and I'm now a gold level sponsor, where education, networking, visibility, and industry discounts are just a few of the benefits that are offered to our members. The Window Covering Association of America is the only national nonprofit trade association that's dedicated to the window coverings industry and the dealers, decorators, workrooms, designers, and installers that make up our membership. Join today at WCAA.org. WCAA, where you are never in business alone. I've also been extremely fortunate to be able to work with Merrill Y. Landis Ltd. It's a family-owned and operated custom workroom and product distribution company to the trade with over 70 years of experience. And in addition to their custom work, they offer a wide variety of decorative drapery hardware. They offer stout and flare 21 fabrics. They have Roman shade operating systems and assembly kits. They have motorization and workroom supplies, and they serve both designers and workrooms. And you can check out the MYL Advantage at MYLLTD.com. How do you handle a failure, and what do you consider a failure?
Usually I swear, which is not really good, but yeah. And then I just start to try to figure out what went wrong.
Okay.
Was it communication? Was it, not, I guess I just try to figure out then what went wrong and then try to go from there to fix it.
Okay. All right. I always love asking about books and reading and classes. Have you read any books or taken any classes that really significantly affected you personally or changed your business in any way?
Well, definitely Michele Williams, Pricing Without Emotion. Yeah, that really just did open up my eyes. And I mean, for both parts of my business, not just the window treatment, but.
Yeah, I would think that, I think sometimes we look at some professions like nursing, like teaching, and they're such humanitarian, altruistic things, but you deserve to be paid for them. Well, especially teaching and nursing, because those who have the patience to do it really deserve to be paid. But I think sometimes that because you have a calling, like being a nurse or being a teacher, that people overlook the fact that you deserve to be paid for it. So, and I have to agree with you. The Pricing Without Emotion was life-changing for many of us, myself included.
Yes.
Okay. Celeste, do you use much technology when it comes to teaching the kids or running your workroom end of the business?
Just really just the computer and stuff. I mean, there's not a whole lot of I do have computerized sewing machines.
Okay.
For the kids and stuff like that. But otherwise, I would say probably not a whole lot of technology.
Okay. All right. What 3 business items could you not live without? And it can be one side of the business or both or whatever.
Definitely the sewing machines.
Okay. Yeah, it wouldn't be much of a business either way.
My computer, I do use, I'm obviously on it a lot to take care of all my social media and stuff like that. And then I would guess my iPhone for all the pictures and everything else.
Yeah.
And the schedules and all that.
I certainly hear that more often than I did when I started the podcast, that is really the one thing you cannot lose or do your business without.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the social media for a little bit. Does it help to be teaching young kids? Can they help you with the social media at all?
I have never asked them really.
Okay.
I haven't really. Because I think I started a lot of it before I had them in that.
Okay. I just was curious.
Yeah.
This is definitely your younger students are really, they were born
right into it.
Right into it. So with running two different businesses that are both sewing related, do you ever sew for pleasure? Do you ever sew just for yourself?
Yes, I do.
I love hearing that answer. What do you make?
Well, I make a lot of quilts.
Okay.
Mostly because I like playing with fabric, and it's a way to buy pretty fabric and turn it into something.
This is true. And not just keep a stash, actually do something with it?
Yeah, right. So I have a stash of quilts instead of
makes perfect sense to me.
And then I do a lot of sewing for the grandkids.
Okay.
I make T-shirts and shorts and Christmas pajamas and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now, you mentioned their ages. Do they know enough that they're getting like Christmas pajamas and things like that yet? Is it something that they look forward to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they do. Yeah. They really do.
In the window treatment end of your business, what is your favorite thing to make for clients?
I like making balances.
Okay.
Yeah.
Particular kind or just balances in general? Just
board mounted balances. Mm-hmm. It's like you have control, but it's not super rigid.
It's a good point.
Because there's some fluidity there, but it's all on a board.
Okay.
And it's done.
Right. See, that's why I like to get things done. Celeste, what do you do extremely well?
I think I'm pretty organized. Okay. I mean, just keeping all the pieces and parts of the two different businesses.
Yeah, that would require that.
Together and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right. Good for you. I'm not so well organized, but what do you not do so well?
I don't handle change very well.
Really?
Yeah. I like my routines.
Okay.
I have, certain exercise classes on certain days. And I mean, I don't mind with the teaching, I don't mind having kids at different levels, but it's like, okay, this day is these kids.
Okay.
And it kind of thing,
that makes sense to me. Okay. When you have a lot of change, what kind of reaction do you have with that? Is yours physical? Is it emotional? I'm curious.
I do. I get very nervous. I wind up with an upset stomach. Okay.
Yeah. It's, and I hope you don't mind me asking that. I've noticed that, the older I get, the more easily my routine is disrupted. And I think, well, that's not how I wanted today to go, or I had this plan, and I can get into some very good routines. Notice I didn't say ruts, I said routines, because I don't love change either. I have to really push myself for it. So I totally relate to that. And mine is usually either a headache or an upset stomach. So I have to learn to listen to myself. How about you?
Yeah.
Celeste, what about you would surprise people?
That I have been part of Team USA representing the United States in world competition at duathlons.
Really?
Yep.
So tell people what a duathlon is, in case they're not.
Okay, so duathlon is a run, bike, run. Okay. So it's like a triathlon, but for those people who don't want to swim.
Okay. Okay. And so tell me about that. That is really exciting. How long have you been involved?
Probably about 8 years, 10 years.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've seen pictures of you biking on your Facebook page and things like that, but I don't think I realized that you were doing this. So hence what surprises you. It surprises people about you. What does it involve being involved with Team USA?
So you have to compete at the national level, which they have the nationals once a year, which were canceled this year.
Of course.
But they'll be in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, next summer. And you have to finish in the top 17 of your age group.
Okay.
And then that qualifies you to go to world competition. And then those are held literally around the world. So we've been to Australia and to Spain to be in them.
Oh, that is so exciting. And how did you get started with that?
It all kind of, I'm trying to think. When I moved from our other house to this one about 20 years ago, I took up running because I didn't like the aerobic classes that were offered. And I got in with a group and started training. Somebody was just opening up their own business, started training with them, and they were like, well, why don't you try this? And so we tried it on a very small level and found out that, I kind of like this. And we just, I started it and my husband followed me, and we just have been doing it since.
Okay. And I love that you said earlier that success for you is finding balance. When you're training for races like that, you need to pay attention. You need to dedicate some time to it. So it really does require balance. You can't be working 24/7 and still find the time to train for that.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I'm so impressed by that. What's the longest distance that you've done?
We did a half iron distance duathlon. So we ran a mile, biked for, 70.3, and then ran 13.1 after that.
Oh my goodness. That's incredible. I have to tell you, I am beyond impressed. I am a runner and I have run a half marathon. And when I was done, I said, I don't ever want to run that far again. But to ride a bike for 70 plus miles before you run a half marathon, that's incredible.
I did walk the second half. I ran the first half, and the second one was a fast walk.
You finished it, Celeste. That's you are way up there in my book. It's still many more miles than most of us do. That's awesome. So we both talked about not really liking change, but clearly you have some resiliency because you're running two very different businesses. And when you're working with kids, you really have to be resilient. In what ways do you think you are?
I just think that really kind of from the beginning, getting married and having a baby and working and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of, things didn't go like I had thought, but it was just like, oh, okay, well, this has to get done.
Right.
Okay. Just do it. And I'm the oldest of 6.
Okay.
And I think that was the other thing. I was like, okay, well, things may not just be the way you want, but you go with the flow and stuff. So
yeah, that's so interesting to me because I come from a big family too. You really do kind of learn to suck it up and do what you have to do without a whole lot of complaining because nobody really cares.
Right. Yeah. Nobody's going to listen anyway. So
Exactly. How much older are you than the next in line in your family?
There's only 15 months between my sister and I.
Okay.
But there's 15 years between myself and my youngest sister.
Okay.
And only 5 years between my daughter and my youngest sister.
Oh, wow. Okay. So your family is spread out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You definitely learn to be independent and resilient when you're in those circumstances. What traits do you think someone has to have to be able to be an entrepreneur?
I think you have to be able to turn on a dime. Even though I don't like change, you have to be able to learn how to do that because, again, things might not go as you planned or the pandemic hits or whatever, and you have to figure out, okay, so what am I going to do instead?
It's interesting because I think that sewing kind of teaches us that. I mean, the first time we come across something, well, that's a little shorter than it needs to be. Like, we find ways to make things work. And I think I used to say, do you think you need to be resilient? I think we all are. And we find ways. It's just how we discover the ways to be resilient that I always find so fascinating. So I'm going to put links to your website and your Facebook page and all that. Do you have an Instagram account, Celeste?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make sure that you sent me all the links. I will put all of those in the show notes. My final question, which I generally hate to ask because it wraps up the interview, is what advice would you give to someone? I want to change the question for you a little bit because you're running two businesses. What advice would you give to somebody who's trying to branch out and do something a little bit different? And what advice might you give to someone who's considering teaching sewing?
For those who might be considering teaching sewing, I would suggest that you look through a lot of different programs and decide what you would want to do, and sew up the projects ahead of time. Because I did have a problem where I ran into a thing where the yardage that they gave you was not enough.
Interesting.
So, I would say that if you want to get into that, you need to have some decent basic skills, because the kids are going to come to you with some problems, and you need to figure it out. But I would say that you want to investigate. And now, what was the other part?
What advice would you give to someone who's running more than one business and they have different needs, like your two businesses do?
I would say you have to set aside different parts of either a day or different days to concentrate on the different parts of the business.
Okay.
Because otherwise, I think you run into problems with, like, now what is that I'm supposed to be doing, or that. So I tend to do my social media one thing or two things every day.
Okay.
And then I just kind of, compartmentalize the different parts.
Yeah, because the overlapping
Yeah.
could be really distracting.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that advice. I appreciate it. And I have to say, I send questions ahead of time. I did not send that question like that. You answered it extremely well and very quickly. I apologize for changing it at the last minute, but I thought it would make more sense to ask that. So I appreciate that, Celeste.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And you made it much easier than I thought it would be.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Recording the podcast with people has really given me the opportunity to meet so many people, mostly virtually, even before the pandemic, because we meet on Zoom regardless of what's going on in the world. But I find that it's so interesting how alike and different we all are. And I was so impressed with what Celeste has accomplished, both in her business and in her personal life, with her duathlon. And teaching children, I think, is so important, and it's such a valuable skill, and it's not one that I see myself doing. So I'm always so impressed and so grateful when I learn that someone else is capable of teaching children how to sew. I really appreciate that Celeste took the time to talk with me, and I hope you enjoyed hearing from Celeste today. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great day.